So here we are on the other side of the September 2023 Nintendo Direct, which, as we all know, was pretty polarizing, and I think most people felt pretty let down and disappointed by it. I myself did as well, which I discussed on my last video, and I'm sure you probably watched that. And, there are some people who certainly liked the Direct, and that's fine, and there are always a couple of games to get excited about, and there was a handful that made me excited as well. But as far as the Nintendo Direct goes, now that we are, like I said, on the other side of it, it kind of allows me to have a conversation I've been thinking about for a few weeks now, which is really breaking down what I see are the main three options on how Nintendo might choose to reveal the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, it's important to note the difference on what I'm talking about here. We're no longer talking about when they're going to reveal the Nintendo Switch 2. We're talking about how, and I think that that is an important distinction, because I don't think a lot of folks have been considering, as we get closer and closer to the date or the time that we feel Nintendo will reveal it, whether it's this year or next year, I don't think a lot of people have been really considering the format or the delivery method Nintendo would choose to do it. There's a lot of folks, every time there's going to be a Nintendo Direct, who start to wonder and think and predict that maybe the next generation console would show up there, which is what made me start to realize I think this conversation will be valuable to people, because there really isn't a world where I see them choosing a Nintendo Direct as the format to do so. I could be wrong, Nintendo could change it up at any time, but because of that, that's what brought me to this idea and made me realize in my brain that there are, like I said, three distinct ways that I could see Nintendo choosing to reveal the Switch. And I also think that each one comes with its own likelihood, right? There's one that I think is very likely, and then there's one that I think is not so likely. So let's take some time and go over and discuss what I see are these three methods and which one I think is the most likely. So while we're at it, let's keep going down the Nintendo Direct course and discuss that, because like I said, it is the method that I think is honestly the least likely. Typically, Nintendo doesn't really choose Directs to reveal new versions and new iterations of hardware. It's not impossible, but for the most part, and especially in the Switch era, the only time we've ever seen them address new Switch hardware of any kind in a Nintendo Direct is when they're revealing different models and different themed versions of the Switches, right? If it's a Pokemon theme, if it's an Animal Crossing theme, if it's a Splatoon theme and whatnot, and Zelda theme. To be fair, by the way, I don't think all of those were revealed in a Direct, but many of them were. So that's usually what we see. But when it comes to revealing updated versions, changes in the hardware, or next generation pieces of tech, really it's not the Nintendo Direct format that they choose to do that in. Now, like I hinted at the beginning, is it impossible? No, it's not impossible. Maybe they give us a Nintendo Direct like in February or March of 2024, and for all we know, at the end of that Direct, they change it up, they surprise me, and they say, to close out this show, let's reveal the next generation console. Maybe they do that. So there is the slightest chance, because Nintendo is always allowed to change how they typically do things. But if I'm being honest, it just doesn't make sense, and I don't see that being the way that they would actually choose. Now let's talk about the second method that they may choose to go with, and the one that I think is the next most likely. I actually put this at kind of a 50-50. I think that there is certainly a good chance that this is the way Nintendo would choose to do it, but it's also not really something I see as much of a lock either. But it could be in sort of a unique presentation specific to the Nintendo Switch 2 or the next generation piece of hardware, right? So not a general Direct that also includes a reveal of the Switch 2, but something that's a Direct-like presentation that is only about showing us the console, confirming its name, giving us a release window or a release date, and obviously teasing and hinting a few games, and maybe showing off some of the gimmicks or the changes or the evolution to the Switch mechanic that are being introduced with this hardware. What I like to think of is something like the Nintendo Switch Lite reveal, which was, gosh, I don't know if 7-8 minutes, 10-15 minutes, I don't know. It was around 10-ish or so minutes, and it was Koizumi presenting the console, showing it to us, giving us some trailers, and talking about why it's different as a Switch Lite as opposed to a Switch. And it was, like I said, kind of a Direct format, but it was just in its own 10 or 15 minute little kind of presentation. It wasn't part of a Nintendo Direct, it was its own thing. Even the Switch OLED just got a separate reveal independent from a Direct, And so those iterations of the Switch hardware, they chose to do independent of a Direct, but it was a way to showcase what they were doing with that console. To me, I could see them one day uploading a video to YouTube and to Twitter and to all the relevant places to do so. And like I said, 10 minutes long, here's the Switch 2, here's the name, and it's going to be some folks, like a Koizumi, for example, or whoever maybe makes the most sense to do so. And they're going to be there showing, here's the new console, it's this, it's called this, here's what it will do differently than the current Switch, and here's when you can look forward to seeing more, and all these different things. And it's going to be that kind of a presentation. Maybe it's going to contain a shorter trailer within that 10 or so minutes. I really think that whether it's near the end of this year or it's early on in next year, they could just surprise us with that 10-minute upload of something that's a Switch 2 specific presentation. And so naturally, this brings me to the third option that I personally see, and the one that I also personally think is probably the most likely. Also not a lock, but whereas the 10-minute presentation video to me was about 50-50, I might be sitting about 60-40 on this one. And it would be nothing more than just a 3-minute trailer. Very similar, if not identical, to the Nintendo Switch's reveal in 2016. It may seem like a lifetime ago for many of us, but if you think back to October 2016, when that trailer just hit the internet, granted, Nintendo informed us the night before, hey, tomorrow morning you're going to see a look at the Nintendo NX. We knew to look forward to it, but when that morning hit, we just went to YouTube and there it was, a 3-minute video talking about the new Nintendo console, and it was just a 3-minute trailer that revealed to us the name of the console. It showed off what the gimmick was, that it's a hybrid device that sits in a dock and then you take it on the go, and they were hinting at some games and we were seeing the Joy-Cons and understanding what it was, and it was literally just a trailer. No Koizumi, no Takahashi, no Reggie, because he was still there at the time. No, nothing. It was just a trailer. And so I think that there's a lot of value to just being straightforward and simple, not taking up a lot of people's time, being very efficient with your messaging. Here's 2 to 3 minutes to just give you the basic idea, and they made sure to let us know very soon after that there will be more information coming very soon, which at the time was that following January of 2017. So it was only like a 3-month wait between that trailer and the first larger blowout that they gave us from Japan to let us know a lot more about the Switch. And, you know, Nintendo doesn't necessarily try to repeat themselves very often, but I feel like this could be a case where maybe it could work in their favor to just kind of copy that general format and just reveal a trailer one day, like I said, 2 to 3 minutes, that just showcases what the Switch 2 is, and then they add in the messaging that we will tell you more later at this date. Now, to be fair and play devil's advocate to myself just a little bit here, for all we know, there could be something about the Switch 2 next generation console, something about the way it operates, the timing that they plan to release it, maybe the way it needs to be showcased, that for all we know, a 3-minute trailer just wouldn't get the job done. I can't really picture in my brain what that could be, but maybe that's the case, so I just want to throw that out there as a part of this conversation, that could be a reason why my theory of that being the most likely format could be wrong. But at the end of the day, it's probably just going to be another Switch, or even if it's some other weird idea that's a console with some other gimmick or VR or whatever the heck they're doing. Maybe you wear like a suit, or put on a helmet or wear gloves or do something crazy. Whatever weird Nintendo gimmicky idea it is, I still ultimately feel like a trailer could get the job done just for the initial messaging, just to get the reveal out of the way, right? And then, like I said, the larger demonstrations, the more significant info, the more serious hints at games and launch games and stuff, that can come later. Just to pop the seal and get it out to the world and say, this is what it is, expect more soon, I still feel like a 2 to 3 minute trailer could get the job done, just like the Switch's trailer in 2016. So again, I feel like of these 3 options, Nintendo Direct, 10-minute presentation, or 3-minute trailer, that 3-minute trailer is still the one I think is slightly above the others as the most likely option. And so, even though I said I didn't really want to make this conversation about the timing of the reveal and everything, because we've all beaten that to death, and at this point, who even knows what Nintendo's planning to do, the only thing I will say, and I mentioned this at the very end of my last video reviewing the Nintendo Direct, and I'll remind you of it here in this conversation too, I think that there still is a chance that Nintendo might choose to do something in 2023 regarding the Switch 2, especially with a lot of us feeling that this last Nintendo Direct showed us that they're really getting to the end of pushing the Switch as their main console. They're clearly just getting a bunch of last minute stuff out. Maybe that was the last Nintendo Direct we will ever see that is focused solely on the current Switch. And so what if they did that with the intent of revealing the next console before the year is over? So I made this comparison in that last video as well. In 2016, we had a Nintendo Direct in September, okay? I want to say it was focused on the 3DS. I could be wrong, but there was a Direct in September of 2016, okay? Just like we had a Direct in September this year. And then it was only the following month, 1 month later, after the September Direct that year, is when they gave us that 3-minute Nintendo Switch trailer reveal. And so it's possible for Nintendo to say, here's our last Direct for the year, we're talking about games for our current hardware, and then 30 days later, they're like, oh, and here's the next-gen thing, you're going to play it next year. They did that 7 years ago, in 2016. Is it impossible that they do it this year? No, I don't think it's impossible. I'm not making a hard prediction, okay, that they're going to do that. So I want you to understand that. This isn't so much a prediction as it is a reminder that Nintendo did that in the past. And so with 3 months to go between now and the end of 2023, maybe they squeeze in a huge reveal of Metroid Prime 4, or maybe they squeeze in a trailer or a 10-minute presentation specific to the Switch 2 or the next-gen hardware. I think it could happen. I'm not necessarily predicting it, but it could happen. So I wanted to put that out into the ether so that you guys can hear the idea and think about it, rattle it around in your heads, and decide if you feel like it could be something that Nintendo might do as well. So all I'm going to say near the end here is that to me, this is the most exciting time as a video game fan or a Nintendo fan we could be in. It's exciting when we can expect new hardware, next generation power. For Nintendo, this would be a next generation leap, even though we already know Sony and Microsoft have already gotten there. This is exciting, I think a lot of younger folks out there who are less used to generation changes sometimes get a little too attached to what the current thing is, and they feel almost sad or slighted against at the very idea of Nintendo doing new hardware or other people being excited for a next generation hardware. They're so maybe emotionally attached to the Switch as it is that they can't picture a world where Nintendo moves on from it. And I sympathize in some ways to maybe some folks who feel that way, but you have to understand this is how things go, man. You can love the Switch as it currently is, just like I do, but also be excited for and ready for the next generation. Nintendo has to move on from the Switch eventually. They cannot rely on this thing forever. And I think most of us know that the Switch has long since passed its prime. Even though it's still selling, and even though they're still releasing good games, it still can't last forever. Nintendo has to plan ahead and be forward thinking. And so, as we all sit here constantly waiting for that imminent reveal of a Switch 2, I find this to be exciting. It's a positive thing. It's a good thing. It's something we can rally around and look forward to. And it's also good because we're talking about the future of Nintendo's business and hopefully their future success. So this is what I think. These are the delivery methods that I could see Nintendo utilizing for a Switch 2 reveal. Which one of these makes the most sense to you? And that's about it.